We're live. What's up, everybody? How's it going? My name is Scott Stanloggy, and I am a co-host here on JavaScript Jam, and we have this guy
Anthony
over here.
Campolo, and a guest, Chris Ferdinandi, the vanilla JavaScript guy.
Vanilla.
Hey. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man.
Why don't you give a little introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So the short version is that I teach people vanilla JavaScript, and I believe that there's a simpler and more resilient way to make things for the web. So I author a newsletter that goes out each weekday to about 14,000 developers. And I create a whole truckload of educational material, courses, books, workshops, things like that, that you can find over at gomakethings.com/JavaScriptJam. And so my whole, I guess, shtick, as it will, is that I think a lot of the modern best practices that we use on the web are actively harmful both to the people who use the things that we build and the web itself. And a lot of kind of this focus we've put on developer experience is both to blame and has resulted in a DX that is not actually as good as I think a lot of times we like to think it is. So that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, appreciate you coming. And I've been actually we were just kind of talking about this before we started recording, but I've had your emails coming to my inbox since like December of 2020. So back when COVID started happening and all that, and that's kind of when I started to shift more from like I have like a lot of marketing background, and I started to shift towards more of a like developer technical kind of role, and was getting into JavaScript and things like that. So yeah.
For me, I'd heard you come up on many of the podcasts I listen to. You're someone who you're very plugged into the whole podcast scene. So if you follow, JavaScript Jabber and shows like that, weren't you a host on JavaScript Jabber for a little bit?
I was. I left for political reasons.
Yeah. So it's I appreciate the fact that you really get yourself out there and like communicate the things you're doing. And so, both Scott and I are pretty familiar with your work for sure.
Awesome. Nice. Well, this will be better than the last podcast I was on where I got yelled at for 30 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
That's funny.
Sometimes.
I mean, we're friendly hosts, don't worry.
Excellent. Cool. So where should we start? Do you want me to just give my normal spiel? Do you guys have any questions you'd like to talk about? I'm happy to.
I think Scott has some questions about kind of like your content farm and how you keep it so farming
consistent for sure. Like, dude, for days, 20 emails in a month minimum for sure.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We love the content. It's good content. It's not just, you're not just sloshing stuff out there. Like, it's good stuff, right? All of it. So we'd love to hear how you're doing that. Is it a team? Is it you? Is it, what's going on?
No. So like 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more at this point. It's been a while. Like COVID time. The last 3 years have been like a blur. But so at one point I had a weekly newsletter, and it was kind of like just a summary of cool stuff I'd found on the web that week. Links to other articles, my own thoughts, stuff like that. And I had a humble 30 subscribers, and it had been that way for at least half a year. It was just like a completely stuck newsletter. And I'm in this business Slack run by Jonathan Stark over at jonathanstark.com. At one point, I was actually paying him for business coaching, and him and this other dude who also helps like freelancers make more money, Philip Morgan, were like, yo, you should start writing every day. And I was like, no, that's insane. I'm not going to do that. There's no way I can write every day. And even if I could, no one is going to want to read that much from me. And they were like, no. Like, just trust me. This will change your business. Just trust me. And I'm like, I don't trust you. And they're like, but you should. Like, just try it for a month And if you don't like it, you can always go back. Like you only have 30 subscribers. What you lose half of them, who cares, right? It's like 15 people. So I was like, all right, that stings, but you're right. So I gave myself a challenge. I said if I could come up with a month of ideas in 10 minutes, I would do it. And I set a timer on my phone, and I think I came up with like 28. And I was like, all right, that's good enough. Let's go from here. And I given myself a challenge that like no idea was too small. So I'm like, all right, one day I'll write about how to get an element in the DOM with query selector. And then the next day I'll talk about how to get multiple elements with query selector all. Like normally that would be one article for me, but I'm like, I'm just going to cheat and split it up and we'll see what happens. And it was really wild. So a week in, I started getting back. So I lost like maybe 4 or 5 subscribers right off the bat. Just from I told people it was going to happen, and I lost some folks who were like, I don't want to hear from you that much. But I ended up growing like an extra like maybe 10 or 15 subscribers. So I more than made up for it. And after a week, I started getting back questions. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll answer this in a future email. Add it to the list. And so at the start of January, I had a list of like 100 article ideas. No, it was more than that, but I culled it back to 100. I was like, I haven't written about these things. They're out of date now. Like, I'm not going to write about them. And today that list is at 188 because I keep coming up with ideas faster than I can like write them.
Yeah.
I totally identify with that. I have roughly 50 markdown files right now in my blog drafts of like some that are like just a dump of links versus some that are like 90% written and just like this huge spread.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say that I love what you're talking about and how, the business coach gave you that advice and it was like, hey, you need to do this, start writing every day. It's so true though, because consistency and it's not just the consistency of it, but it's the fact that
it's the practice.
It's the practice. Yes. But it's also the polarity, right? And so like when you have polarity, then you're going to attract more, right? When you're not, and you're sitting in the middle here and you're not creating content and all this stuff, then you're not going to attract those people, right? And yes, you're always going to have people that drop off, just like you said, you had 4 or 5 drop off, but you gained like 14 or 15 and it's because you're attracting, right? And so, with that being said, I think that that's a huge piece that if you're listening to this, like don't miss out on that. That's very true. You need to be, find your voice is what you're doing too, right? In that and writing all that.
So I'm in a handful of like Discords and Slacks, and I get this question a lot. Like people, I'd like to write more. And honestly, like the best way to start writing more is stop sitting on these mega blog posts. Like I want to write the definitive guide to X, and just write what you can in like 15 or 20 minutes and hit publish, and then come back the next day and write the next part and just keep going until you're done. Because I know a lot of folks kind of get stuck in this. It's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. And like it just sits in drafts for months. And I actually found it harder to write weekly than daily. It's now just a thing I do when I have my coffee in the morning. And I don't proofread. I just write until I'm done for that particular period of time and hit publish. It creates this cycle that Jonathan Stark refers to as the flywheel effect, where once you start doing it, the system just kind of takes over. And so what's happened for me is articles turn into questions, which turn into more articles, which eventually turn into a big enough collection of articles that I can make an ebook out of them. And then the ebook becomes a video course. And then the collection of video courses becomes a workshop. And like just over the course of 2 or 3 years, what started as writing daily turned into this massive education business, kind of by accident.
No, I love it. I love it. That's an amazing story because that's like, I'm sure you've heard of ClickFunnels, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I used to work for ClickFunnels for like 3 years, coaching other entrepreneurs and business owners like yourself on how to, better market their product and services online. So I love hearing your story. It's so organic. It's so authentic. It's so awesome. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the advice that Jason Langsdorff gives, that he got this phrase from Sarah Drasner, I think, using every piece of the buffalo stick, and how like
Yep.
when you have content, you're able to repurpose it in all these different ways, because it's like the content kind of transcends the medium at a certain point, and it's like you're just having you know the pure ideas you want to communicate, and then you figure out different ways and different mediums to communicate that idea.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And both Jason and Sarah are awesome, so I'm not surprised to hear that. The other thing too, just in terms of growth, it was pretty wild. I went from stuck at 30 subscribers to I started doing this in I think like May or June, and by year end I had hit 1,000 subscribers, and then
Nice.
the next year I was at 3,000, and then 6, and now it's been like 4 or 5 years, and I'm around 14,000.
So you're getting
Daily
exponential
subscribers.
growth.
I was
essentially,
for a
on
while.
a long scale.
Yeah, I think sometime in the last year, that has slowed down. So I've been hovering around 14,000 for a little while now.
Let's talk about that. Do you have theories about why that is? Does it have to do with maybe your output, or just you hit a certain limit, or
Yeah,
COVID
I definitely don't think
shadow
I've hit a
banned?
limit. Yeah, no, I think there's a few things that have happened. So a lot of this coincides with mass exodus off of Twitter. So where I maybe benefited a lot from social sharing and growth on a platform like that, a lot of that has been dispersed into pockets of smaller communities elsewhere on the web. So rebuilding a bit there. I also think there's maybe a little bit of digital fatigue. Just when like early in the COVID pandemic, I think people went hyper digital. So like everything was online. And I think we've seen a little bit of like I don't want to say a backlash against that, but like I'm just exhausted with so much online. And so there's maybe a little bit less of that. These are also just theories. I mean, there's no way that the developer community is limited to just 14,000 people. So I think part of it for me is just finding additional pockets of people that don't know about me yet.
Yeah, I don't even know if it really matters that much though either too. I mean, like 14,000 people, if you've got 10% of those people listening to you and buying your stuff, like that's great. Like that's huge
Like
engagement.
1,000 true fans, they used to say, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I also feel like
no,
once
I've
you
been
hit a
thinking about this a
certain-
lot, actually.
I think
yeah.
once you hit a certain mass of people too, that you can get organic growth by just them recommending it to their friends.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the 1,000 true fans thing though, because I've been thinking about this a lot. One of the things I often hear about, like one-time purchases versus like a subscription.
Yeah.
Is with subscription products, you always have to worry about the churn, right? And like keeping people. The thing they don't really talk about is how like one-time sales products are their own type of churn, and that if you don't constantly either make new things for existing people to buy or find new people to buy what you already have,
Launch.
yeah, just constant launch. Like that's its own kind of grind, and I've
yeah.
gotten kind of tired of it, to be honest. Especially where the things I teach about are more evergreen. It's not like, oh, React just dropped hooks and changed the way that everything
Right.
works, so now I need to update this core. Like my stuff isn't really like that. Even when new things come out, the old stuff still works. So, so yeah, it's I actually nice segue into the fact that literally just yesterday I launched this new subscription learning platform called the Lean Web Club. That for $9 a month gets you access to this library of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tutorials and projects and all sorts of other stuff. So
What's the site, the landing page there?
it is at leanwebclub.com.
Awesome.
I have no idea how it's going to do. This is like a big gamble for me. It could either cannibalize sales of all my other stuff but not make up for them, or it could be the future of my business, and I'm just not sure
Well, if the
which
value's
one it's going
there,
to be yet.
I'm sure it'll be great.
So
Which I'm
We'll
sure the
see.
value will be there. I mean, knowing what you have. So
Thank you. Yeah. No, we'll see how this goes. This is kind of my I have high hopes for this, but who knows?
Yeah, I see a shout out here from Wes Boss on there. That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's it's funny. He actually tweeted that when he was building his beginner JavaScript course. I think he was doing a lot of research for the course and just kept stumbling onto my stuff, which was kind of a fun and interesting little anecdote.
have you ever heard of James Schramko?
I don't know that I have.
So he has a book called Work Less, Make More. He's not in the tech
Okay.
industry, but he's in the business to business coaching and stuff like that. But
The counterintuitive approach to building a profitable business and a life you actually love.
Love it.
hey, it's very marketing, but he is amazing, and he has successfully done the subscription, uh, piece of this, and he has like his retention is like 3 or 4 years per person,
That's awesome.
and it's amazing. Yeah, so like there's some good stuff in his book, and then obviously he has other things going on, but yeah.
All right. Emailing this to myself now so I can check it out later. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
And that will be in the show notes for curious listeners as well. So how does the Lean Web Club, I guess, differentiate from the content you produced in the past?
Yeah. So it's a great question. It is so part of it is structure, part of it is volume. I'm not doing a great job explaining this, and I should probably come up with a better sales pitch.
This is a good time to workshop it.
Yeah, this is absolutely. Yeah. So so there's a few problems, right? So I shouldn't say a few problems, but so my courses and ebooks are very narrowly focused on kind of specific topics, right? So I've got one on DOM manipulation, one on working with APIs, one on ES modules. And my students generally love this because there's not a lot of fluff. It's just, here's what you need to know. Here's some code, here's some instruction on it. Here's a little project, go. And those are really great for when you're first learning something. But they're very narrow, and if you were to buy all of them, it can cost a lot of money. So the Lean Web Club addresses a couple of challenges there. First of all, it's got all the things. So
Love that.
so just all the different topics, they're all sorted by category. Each one includes video, text version, and source code. If you're someone who's just looking to get started and you don't have $100 or more to drop on this, it's a really great way for you to get started today. The other thing that it addresses that I've always struggled with in the past is that it's more holistic. So I often have like projects that I want to share that I think would be really helpful to help people learn, but they maybe require some tutorials if you're someone who's brand new for you to kind of understand. And there are tutorials that are scattered across several different like guides or collections of learning, or I have content that's not big enough for a full course, and so I don't really have a great way to package it and like sell it to people. And so having things in this platform really feels me from the constraints of a typical course model. So the way it works is I have a library of tutorials. Everyone is really, really short. Like these are 2 to 3 minutes on a very specific topic, and they're grouped into categories, right? So you might have a bucket of things around working with selectors, some stuff on loops, some stuff on moving up and down the DOM, all the string methods you'd ever want to know, right? And each one is a short little video with some source code. And then for each one, it gets linked to relevant projects that will help you reinforce those skills if you want. I also have a separate dedicated page with all of the projects, and each project includes links to relevant tutorials so that if you need some background before you start digging in, you can. And when you're done, I have a walkthrough of how I approach that project. So you can, if you get stuck or you need help, you have a way kind of to move forward. And then I also have this feature in there called Learning Paths, where they are collections of tutorials and projects around a broader topic. So rather than just DOM manipulation, for example, I have one on JavaScript essentials that's going to walk you through all of the stuff you need to know if you want to get started as like a junior JavaScript developer. So it'll cover DOM manipulation, working with APIs, array, object, string, and number manipulation, just all of the kind of the basic stuff that you'd be expected to know in your first JavaScript job. Got another one on writing libraries that covers all the different ways you can structure code that's designed to be reused across projects and things like that. So it's designed to be a lot more holistic and inclusive, and provides people with lots of different ways to learn depending on both how they learn best and where they currently are in their process. Because one of the things I've found is that different people need different things at different phases in their learning journey. So what you need when you're just starting is very different from when you're maybe, kind of heading into mid-level in your career.
So that's awesome. And just kind of looking over your leanwebclub.com page here, I was just kind of thinking about a few things, and I don't know, you can take this for what it is, man, whatever you do with it. But for example, like on your join now for just $9 a month, I think that's great. But people love it also when like instead of like, them getting something, right? So maybe like get all the coding instruction you need for only $9 a month, right? Like, or give, right? Like, something like that. But let me get instead of join or click or subscribe or, something like that. Like people want to receive. Another thing I was thinking about, have you thought of doing maybe a 7-day trial kind of thing so people can see it, try it out, and like
literally as we were at like the 30 minutes before this, I was like dropping in the scaffolding to push that out today.
Nice.
So yeah, for sure.
That'll be cool.
For sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll try and link that in the notes then for sure as well. Like get your free 7-day trial to Chris's new leanwebclub.com. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Much appreciated, Scott.
For sure.
Fantastic. Sorry, I just had my brain went blank on me for a minute.
No, you're good. I'd actually be curious if we can kind of take a different direction. I'm sure you've told this story a million times, but I love hearing this. How'd you first learn to code? How'd you get into this stuff?
Yeah, I used to, so I had a degree in anthropology. I was working in HR, which is its own story into itself. But and I have ADHD. So I was failing so bad at my first job. I just could not get stuff done.
I very much
so
identify.
Yeah, it was like, I was just a scattered mess. So I started Googling like how to get stuff done at work, right? Which took me to like getting things done and 43 folders.
And it's like, as an ADHD person, you're like, you tell me I have to sit down and read a whole book to learn how to do this?
Well, so I found blogs and I was reading them and they were helping a little bit, but I was really intrigued by this idea that people had like opinions on things and they were just writing about them. And I was like, I want to do that too, because there's a lot of things I don't like about HR and I kind of want to like share them. So I started a blog and I wanted to have more control over how it looked and felt. So I started kind of hacking my way through HTML and CSS and PHP or WordPress flavored PHP. And I really, really liked it. And I started looking for ways to do more of it in my actual job. And I became known as in my company as the HR guy who knows a little bit of code. And I knew like just a little bit, right? But I was working, eventually I ended up in the like learning and development team, where my primary focus was on like career development kind of stuff. But my boss and I were kind of kicking around this idea of like, rather than training being like, let's get everybody in a room for 8 hours and talk to them, what if we did it more like YouTube, where people just watched short videos of stuff they needed to learn when they needed to know it, and we had it all hosted on some internal platform. So we talked to IT and they're like, oh yeah, no, we can do that. It'll cost $100,000 and it'll take us a year and probably won't have these things you wanted. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So we looked at some outside agencies and they're like, oh yeah, no, we can do that in like 6 weeks. No problem. $500,000. And I'm like, no, we're not going to pay that. This is just like a proof of concept. So my boss, he asked me the question that changed my career forever. He looked me in the eyes and he goes, hey, Chris, you know a little bit of code. Can you build this? And I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, no, I cannot. This is well beyond my capabilities. And he goes, well, can you learn? I go, probably not, but I'll try. So I just literally just disappeared for 2 weeks and dove into the bowels of Stack Overflow and tried to figure out how to hack WordPress, which was the only kind of platform I knew, into kind of an app thing. And I wrote the most awful code I've ever written in my life. But I got like this, I don't want to call it vaporware, like kind of this really rough proof of concept thing stood up, and I was absolutely hooked. That was the moment where I was like, forget HR.
I created
that sucks.
something.
This is all I want to do for the rest of my life. This is amazing. And that started a 2-year journey for me of leaving HR and becoming a web developer. So focusing a lot more on building my skills, networking, going on and bombing tons of interviews, and eventually getting my first gig at Constant Contact, where I lasted for exactly 6 weeks.
Nice. I was gonna say that sounds like a pretty cool gig, but it sounds like it was a minor one.
No,
in the
so
grand scheme of things.
it wasn't. I left. I wasn't like fired or anything. It was so Constant Contact at the time, they had one of the best learning cultures of any place I've ever worked. It was like somewhere between an hour and a half and 2-hour commute one way for me during like normal commuting hours.
That's a lot.
And during the interview process, they were like, "Oh yeah, no, we can talk about remote work once you get settled in." And then I got settled in, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't do remote work here." And I was like, "All right, cool, I'm leaving." And they're like, "Oh no, we can make an exception." And I was like, "Nah, I'm sorry, it's too late now."
Yeah.
And I don't think it was the company. I think it was just like my hiring manager was like old school and kind of crappy. But yeah, that's another story for another. Actually, that was the whole story. But
You're right.
Constant Contact was otherwise really, really cool. I still keep in touch with some of my old coworkers there.
Wow. That's awesome.
Are there other companies you've passed through along the way that you feel like you like took things away from?
Yeah. So it's actually really funny, right? So I went from Constant Contact to this company called Mashery, who does API management software. If you're a company that wants to have an API program, either internal or external, they make software that you can use to generate keys and secrets and authenticate people and determine who has access to what and see analytics and all that. And I was the person who made this white label product look like your brand. So like if Adidas came in, we'd make their website look like adidas.com. And I was there literally until I quit last year to just go full time on my JavaScript education business. So, yeah, so that was a really long running kind of thing. And it was odd because I was there were other developers there, but the group that I was part of, I was like a team of one. And so a lot of my kind of learning and growth came from either like self-teaching or finding networks outside of the company to interact with, which was really cool. And it's one of those things where like there were times where I was like, I wish I had more developers to interact with here. But I think in the long run, it benefited me a lot to have a much bigger kind of external network of folks. I think that's the kind of thing we don't always do enough of. Yeah.
Can you relate to that, Anthony? Because like, being in DevRel is totally different than being in the engineering team in like DevOps or whatever, right? Like, and then you have your external community that you hang out with and do things with and chat with online. It's very similar kind of,
Yeah, being DevRel, it can be kind of like an island unto itself or like a connector between different pillars. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of approach it. I think it's also, we talked about this with Dom, how this can lead to a lot of burnout because you end up having to be so many things to so many different people at one time. So for me, I always try and be like, get a little bit of product, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of engineering. And then by getting the sum total of those pieces, you can get kind of a holistic view.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Awesome, man.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm trying to think after that. Yeah, no, that was it. And then I've just been doing this. So I'm kind of a solo educator at this point, which answers the question you asked me earlier. I do not have a team. I'm just literally a one person show.
So you're just hustling, man.
I am. Yeah.
How much do you use AI in your flow?
Not at all.
Really?
I've been kind of resistant to the trend. I may be softening to it. I just haven't gotten around to so I don't use Copilot at all. Mostly for ethical reasons. The idea that they were kind of like taking and license washing code kind of just didn't sit right with me. But yeah, I did not at all.
I would
don't enjoy it at all.
recommend taking the most repetitive task that you do and trying to automate that. Like that's usually what I tell people is like there's something you're doing multiple times that is very obnoxious. See if you can figure out a way to automate that just by asking ChatGPT to do it for you.
This is funny though. This is interesting you say that exact words right there, because James Schramko, the guy I mentioned earlier with the Work Less Make More book, that's one of the things he talks about is create a list of all the repetitive things that you do and then start creating these systems and processes or utilizing AI at this point. That was not a thing back then. But yeah, I mean, I think it kind of correlates well with it, but
yeah. And I'm not opposed to automation. I have automated the hell out of
I think all engineers love automation, right? Like that's why we engineer things is to do do less,
for sure. Like I have something like I think like 15 different like websites with various like products or like marketing funnel kind of things on them. And so I have this whole crazy like API driven marketing message system so that I only have to update my messages in one place and they get populated everywhere. That gets kind of complex over time, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm very much on board.
Awesome. Well, you give us an idea of kind of what you're working on, and are there other things that you want to kind of blast out into the universe and let people know about?
Yeah, no. So the big one is obviously the Lean Web Club, and it's kind of where I'm putting a lot of my energy right now. Other than that, I run a podcast, I run a YouTube channel, I got my daily developer tips newsletter.
Yeah, let's let people know like what those are, how they can
find them.
The
best place to find all of that is go to gomakethings.com/JavaScript Jam or JSJam or JavaScript-Jam. They'll all get you there. And I'll have links to all of this stuff over there. Just because I have like a bajillion.
What is your
projects.
podcast like? What kind of stuff do you cover in that?
Yeah, so it's a lot of I don't know why I keep saying before I answer questions. It's a really annoying habit. I cover a lot of the same stuff that so my newsletter is a mix of strategic and tactical. The YouTube channel tends to be more of the tactical code stuff, particularly the stuff that would benefit from being able to see it. Whereas the podcast tends to be more of the strategy stuff. So that's over at vanillajspodcast.com. And for example, I talk about things like, actually I do have a couple of like code-based things, but in the past I've talked,
or is it just monologues?
It's usually just me. I every now and then have guests. Like I recently had a chat with my friend Ben Myers about accessibility.
Yeah.
I've got another one coming out soon. I love Ben. He's so great. Got another one coming out soon with Jared White, where we talk about, kind of just the general complexity of the industry and some emerging trends that we're seeing with some newer tools. But it is usually just me, largely because editing guests is hard, as I'm sure you both know. And when it's just me, I can just, if I screw up, I can just start over and I don't really do any editing.
That's cool. So one thing real quick, I just want to bring up, and I was thinking about it earlier, I couldn't find it, but I finally found it. So one email that really stuck out to me was from back in late March. And you were talking about flat JSON files for the win. And it kind of like you went through your process of, your courses and your site and how that all works through, rendering all these different things based on what people have bought and what they signed up for. I just love the process that you went through, and you simplify, because you like to keep things simple, right? And I thought it was super cool the way you put all that together. And I think I was actually talking about this on one of our JavaScript Jam lives at one point.
Oh, cool.
But I don't know if you want to get into a little bit of that and just kind of talk about how you created that instead of going with like a ClickFunnels or a lead pages or maybe you use some of those too, but you've got your whole system, right? So I thought it was awesome.
For sure. Yeah, I can talk about that. Absolutely. So my my whole business is driven by Hugo, the static site generator. Literally when I switched from WordPress to a static site generator, Zach Leatherman had like just that week started working on 11D, and he's like, I've got this new thing coming out, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool, but like I want something today, and like it's still in like beta, so I'll check this out in like a few months. And by then I was already like way too deeply entrenched in the Hugo world. Yeah. So one of the really cool things about static site generators is you can usually customize the output formats. So I have mine spit out for my site HTML files, but then it also spits out some JSON files that some of my other Hugo sites will fetch and consume and render things into HTML on various pages. For my my student portal, for people who buy like my courses and workshops and stuff, I am generating HTML pages and then like a JSON file that's only accessible on the server. Like you can't get to it from the front end. And I have
remind me of like an environmental like file or something.
Yeah, it's just an index.json file, but I have my
Right.
htaccess set up so that you can't get to it directly. You can only read it on the server.
Yep.
And so my JavaScript will make a call to an API I set up, which is again really just a PHP file that reads the JSON file, checks if the person should have access to that content, and then sends it back, and then JavaScript takes over and does some rendering. And that works wellish enough. As you might imagine, like there's kind of some... I don't like the idea of rendering with JavaScript when you don't have to. And so that's always bothered me. So for the Lean Web Club, I went a different route, and every markdown file spits out an HTML file and an index.php file. And this time the HTML file is the one that's hidden and only readable on the server, and the index.php file is the one that gets served by default. And that file just really quickly checks, is the person signed in? Yes or no? Is this content for public consumption or logged in users only? And then either redirects them or grabs the HTML file for that view and just spits it back out. And as a result, it's way faster. There's no JavaScript rendering. And it has worked out really, really well.
Well, how many different views? Because I'm sure you have a lot of different products, right? So, like,
yeah. So I basically just I have
templatized it, I'm sure, and then
I did, and I have I really only have like three types of content. So it's either you have to be logged in to see it, you have to be logged out to see it, or it's available for both. And if it's available for both, I tell Hugo to just spit out an HTML file and make it publicly accessible, so there's no like kind of PHP routing that happens there. And then otherwise, it's very, very straightforward. The template grabs some front matter, the like is this public or not thing, and drops it into a PHP variable in the associated index.php file so that it can figure out should the person see it or not. And then you mentioned flat JSON files. So I don't use a database anymore. And it has been like shockingly awesome to just read and write up and down from a JSON file. So I'm using PHP and their built-in hashing function to hash passwords before saving them down, and then compare the provided plain text password when someone logs in against the hashed version in the database, quote unquote, the flat JSON file. And that's basically it. It's really, really simple. It's super nice to be able to manually debug things by just opening files and seeing what's going on, or deleting them or creating new ones. Like resetting a password doesn't involve MySQL queries. I can just go in and drop a hashed thing into the file. It's worked out really, really well for me. And I was a little bit worried about scale. And I still don't have a huge, like my course portal only has about 1,000 students who use it on a regular basis. So it's not like overwhelmingly crippling, but it has worked out shockingly well. Like really, really well. For the authentication piece, I'm setting a cookie that has just like a randomized token string and then
rolled your own auth. You're saying
Right, exactly.
right. I did roll my own auth.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know that sounds absolutely bonkers, but so
it's a hot topic on
It is
Twitter
a hot
these
topic
days.
right
so
now.
when
Yeah,
the
yeah.
person, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. I know there's certain folks on Twitter who have been like, "Oh, this is so easy," and it's not. It was kind of a pain, but
It's not easy, but it's not impossible. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
not-
thing about rolling your own auth.
it's not trivial, and there are
Yeah.
absolutely security concerns, like don't save plain text passwords, like that kind of thing, right? But and you need to really make sure if you're doing what I do with flat JSON files that the directory they're in is not readable from the web, that kind of thing.
Do you have
but-
content on auth, like vanilla JS auth?
Well, that'd be interesting.
Do I?
You might now.
That would be
Hold
some,
on.
That would be some cool.
It would
to
be
me,
super
that's a subject that is underserved.
Oh man.
So I wrote a little bit about this on my site. I also have a course on token-based authentication, but it mostly talks about using like OAuth services or that sort of thing.
You kind of drop into it with vanilla JS, but you're still kind of reaching out to services.
Dude.
Yeah, but instead of having to like download an SDK or use some sort of like third-party thing, like here's token-based.
So
Yeah, here's an OAuth flow using vanilla JavaScript, for example. But I have one of the things I have flagged to do for the Lean Web Club is create a series of tutorials on
your process.
how I actually
Yes, I love
how
that.
I did this.
But
Yeah.
what I would love to see
Yeah.
is, and I think this would be a huge lead magnet for you, is
Okay.
if you created that, but packaged it as a separate thing, and sure, put it in your Lean Web Club as well, so they get it. But because they get everything in there anyway, right?
Mhm.
But take this and create it as a giveaway for subscribing to your list, right?
Mhm.
And I think that if you compare it to all these auths that are popping up around,
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot of probably negative and positive feedback. But
Used to that.
It's going to be, I mean, especially on Twitter, if you're negative, you're game. You're going to be good. So, yeah, I
Right.
think that would be awesome. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, let's see another 5,000 people in there, right?
Cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. The cookie piece is it's literally just it's a token, and then I've got a bunch of token files that like the file name is the token, and it's got the person's email address in it. So it just
Especially since you've
checks,
done
yeah.
this successfully, right? Like that's the
Yes.
thing. Like
This
you've
is not
created
theoretical.
and you've
This
done
is
it
now
successfully.
multiple sites.
You're
Yeah.
using it in something that you sell, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the key here is that people will
Yeah.
really want to find out. Okay, well, what is this? Let me. Yeah, I'll give you my email to find something that's working for sure.
I was previously using I literally had like a headless WordPress just for user authentication.
Yeah.
I run my entire business on a single $5 DigitalOcean droplet, like almost 24 sites, and
That's amazing.
it's worked really, really well. But I noticed a few months back I was like hitting my memory allotment every now and then, just like these massive spikes, and so I ditched WordPress and it dropped by like 20% just like overnight. So
What
just
do you
for
have
me it was a
running
big
now
performance win.
on that DigitalOcean droplet if it's not WordPress.
What was that?
Like what do you have running on that DigitalOcean droplet, or are you saying you dropped the droplet itself?
No. So I removed WordPress from the equation, and
So
like,
now
my
it's just a
memory
bunch
consumption.
of Node servers. Like what is running on?
No, I don't have Node either. It's so it's literally it's like just a lamp stack. So it's just Linux, Apache, and PHP.
Okay.
And I actually think there's an Nginx like layer on top of Apache. I use this service called Server Pilot to kind of manage doing like patches and things like that, security layer. But yeah, I don't have Node installed at all. The whole thing is just a handful of cron jobs that run to rebuild my static sites every night at midnight.
So it's the Hugo thing. You're basically
It's the
like,
Hugo thing, and
Hugo's
then
installed, and you're running that to generate your static
Yeah,
assets
and then
instead of kind of building and pushing something on the fly.
yeah, and then I have like an automated deploy. So whenever anything goes to GitHub, a webhook triggers like a fetch and rebuild.
So you built your own Netlify.
I did, yeah. This was before Netlify was like really a thing, though.
Sure, yeah.
And
That's cool. Once you got it set up, it's like set and forget it. Why mess with it?
yeah, and it's $5. It's so
amazing.
easy. And then And then also, the kind of the PHP that runs the authentication layer. So reading those flat files, updating them, writing back to them, that sort of thing.
That's awesome, man. Have you thought about being more transparent about your internal things that you're doing? Because I'm just hearing all this is freaking phenomenal.
Do you have a uses page? I feel like that would be in line.
I probably should. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I know it's one of those things too. Like, I nerd out on that stuff.
Very good uses pages. Jason Langsdorff has very good uses pages. I'm in the same boat as you, Chris. I want to write a uses pages, and for people who don't know, this is a page where you say my whatever is using this tech, and you kind of like very clearly say I'm building on this with these services. My Astro blog kind of does this, but some people go way deeper. It's like, this is how I stream. This is how I do X, Y, Z,
Oh, crap. Jason's is amazing. All right. Yeah.
We'll link to both of those in the show. Jason's and Ben Myers. Check out both of them. They're very fantastic.
It's like Wappalizer, but truthful.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Now I'm looking at Ben's. This is great, too. All right. Yeah. I've got some catching up to do.
And not just like uses, but like the like, how like there's a lot of other people who are course creators or things like that, and they're more transparent with other things too. Like JLD, John Lee Dumas, on his podcast, he's very transparent with like everything he does on that. But I don't know, just like helping other people to do what you did. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be a huge thing too, right? Because here's the thing, man. Like, how many other people out there do what you do? Like, because like vanilla is very like, yes, it's like you said, it's timeless, but also at the same time, it's very, would you say it's beginner oriented, but some of it isn't as well, right? But and so it attracts a lot of those beginner-ish people like myself in 2020, right? Like that's how I signed up for you, right? And so I was thinking, if you could create another course on how you did this and be more transparent, or not even necessarily a course, like I know that's a huge undertaking, but just putting that process out there of how you did it more, I think there you would get even more people that are developers at your level, to help them get to the next level themselves. So because you only got to be one step ahead of the next guy below you to, what I'm saying? So
yeah, 100%. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, this has been really fun for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to shout out or talk about or?
No, this was great. Actually, I take that back. There's one more thing, and this is always
one more thing.
I feel weird about this as a JavaScript educator, but which is my plea to everybody: please stop using so much JavaScript. Use less of it. More HTML, less JS.
Welcome to JavaScript Jam.
Right? That's my. I'm once again asking you to use less JS.
I'm gonna be teaching my partner to learn a little bit of code, and she was like, "How many programming languages are you teaching?" I'm like, "I'm gonna teach you HTML. Full stop. That's it.
Totally.
We'll go there. We'll see where we go, but don't worry about anything else."
She'll jump on. It'll be quick. Like HTML is good. Yeah.
Yes. HTML goes deep though. Like if you actually go through all the tags you got, like you
can never. Yeah. Like there's no way I would remember them all. I'm just saying like it's.
I'm not saying remember them all, but just like learn how to use them all, and like when would be appropriate time to use a DL tag. Like that. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
I love the data list. Does not get enough love.
Yeah, another shout out to Ben Myers, who wrote a definitive blog post on the DL element. We'll include that in the show notes as well. I think you've given all of the links already. Sounds like gomakethings.com is the place to go. And then I know you're on the Mastodon as well, and the Twitters, and where you got that right, your name here at Chris Ferdinandi, I'm assuming.
Yes. So it's Twitter's the only place where I'm at Chris Ferdinandi. I'm at C Ferdinandi literally everywhere else.
Got it.
Okay.
There's like a Cheryl Ferdinandi from Italy who grabbed C Ferdinandi and then never logged back in on Twitter. So for like a decade, there's just been this abandoned Twitter account.
I heard they're expiring ones.
I heard that
so
too.
Hopefully that ends up happening.
I know, right?
Although
at this
to get
point,
JSJam.
Nice.
Yeah. Actually, one last question. So with your creating and everything, like, do you use Adobe Premiere? Do you use, like, for your podcast, do you use something different than your YouTube stuff?
Yeah.
Or, what are some of your tools? It's always good.
I am and I don't have a uses page. I've written about all of these things in various places. They're just hard to find because they're like scattered in like articles that get buried very quickly because I just write so much. But my favorite microphone is Shure. No, so for the recording piece, and actually I will talk about the microphone in a sec, for reasons, but, so I record everything in ScreenFlow. So podcasts, YouTube videos, courses. I've had to upgrade it a couple of times. Every now and then a Mac OS update.
ScreenFlow that you enjoy, like why?
It does very little.
Why is that? Okay.
Yeah,
it doesn't get in the way.
It doesn't get in the way. So it's
the opposite of OBS. Then it sounds like.
Yeah, I've tried OBS and I literally can't figure it out. I'm too stupid.
I'm the same, man. Like, everyone tells me I gotta learn OBS. I want to be a real streamer, and I'm just like, if this is the only tool that I can use to be a real streamer, I'm not gonna be a streamer. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah. So it's one of those. I can adjust the audio. I can crop and move around clips, and I can like drop in overlays and resize things, but it just doesn't do a ton of stuff, and I really like it for that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Tools that do less, I am a very big fan of.
I used that since about 2016 or 2017. I was using that quite often. It's pretty
cool. So I can also customize the output format. So like, I spit out different files for the podcast versus like something that's going on YouTube or a course. And it also records like the computer sound card. So if I'm ever doing like accessibility courses and I need to demonstrate what VoiceOver is doing, it's really helpful to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, I love coming in there with the VoiceOver afterward easily too. Like StreamYard makes that so easy to do.
Yeah, and if it's like in the way, I can like individually like, okay, cut this volume out, bump this up, lower that, because VoiceOver can be really loud. So I use ScreenFlow for that. I was rocking a Blue Yeti for like a really long time, and then when COVID hit and everybody came back into the house and it wasn't just me recording in the quiet of my home anymore, it was picking up everything. Yeah. So I switched to the Shure. I think this is the MV7. Is that right?
Let's see.
It. Hold on. I always forget which one's the Bluetooth mic or which one's the USB and which one's the fancy one. Yeah, I like this because it's a dynamic mic, which means if I'm not talking directly into it, it doesn't pick it up. And so like if my dog's barking in the background, you can't hear it, which is great. And it's a USB. Yeah, it's the MV7. So it's a USB mic, so I don't have to deal with the whole like, oh, I need a preamp that like boosts the volume and all this stuff. It's just like I plug it in, it works, it's great. All of my ebooks and stuff start off as markdown files. And
hey, Anthony.
I use use Pandoc.
The way, like if
that is my
source of truth for everything.
And there's like what is it? It's like PDF, HTML. There's some other thing that like converts that into some other formats for me. But I have this little like homegrown command line tool that spits my markdown files out as EPUB and Mobi and all this other stuff.
You said you have some ebooks, right? So that's
so
you kind of set yourself up, or you can have Markdown as a source of truth, and then turn that into ebooks. Like this is where I want to be. So like I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull up my article on this. How I create my ebooks. I need to search on my own site to find it. It was a year ago, so it was literally, I do, yes. It's down on the footer, or if you just go to gomakethings.com/.
Back to the uses page. Like I love nerding out on how people set up their own stuff. So
have you tried paid advertising with like something like that, lead magnet like that? Like, hey, here's how you can do your own ebook in the matter of X whatever, just using Markdown and like just focus on developers and stuff like that.
This has been something I've been toying with for a little while.
Sorry, I love ideas. So
I haven't like just dove into that yet, but it's been on my list. So for my books and stuff, like the process is I write the ebook first, and then I pump it through. Let's see, where's my system here? Oh God, why can't I find it? Hold on, GNT Pandoc. I gotta look this up. The more recent article does not have the. Okay, yeah. So I use Pandoc WebKit, HTML to PDF, and Calibre. And I'll drop some links to those in the chat.
In the chat, cool.
But yeah, so I think I used WebKit HTML to PDF or WK HTML to PDF with Pandoc because it gives me more control over the CSS, and I just really wanted to have that control. I literally can drop in like a CSS file. But yeah, so I actually have
check out Pandoc. I've never used that before.
Well, and if it's helpful to you, I have an ebook boilerplate on GitHub that you can just copy paste. I think a couple of dependencies need to get updated because Node, but but it's got a simple kind of like one-liner that you can use to take those files and spit out like a finished book, which is nice.
That's awesome.
It's very nice.
Yeah, and then you can tweak it to your desire, but it works out well for me because I have like a shared, like all of my books have the same about page. There's no need for me to recreate that for every one. So like you can pull in files from different places and like mash them all together, and it works out really well. And then I take the finished ebook and source code and use that as like a loose script for the video portion, which I host on Vimeo. And then I built my own course portal to actually give people access to all these things, to download their books and stream their videos and so on. One other thing that's really nice about Vimeo is you can both control the branding of the player and customize or control where it can actually be embedded. So you can, like restrict it to just certain domains. And I wrote this janky little thing that takes the download file link for each video and rips the video ID out of it, and then generates the iframe for it, and then also creates a download link underneath it so that you get this cool. Nicer, like you can download it for offline or stream it directly on the site kind of situation.
That's nice. Have you thought about doing mobile first for that type of process? Because I know a lot of people consume courses on their mobile as well, but I don't know, just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, say more about that. So like the whole site is responsive.
I guess.
Mobile first. But do you mean something different by mobile first, or do you?
I guess. I understand the responsive piece of it, but as far as like the UI UX like piece, even more specifically, I don't know. Maybe sometimes the UI UX looks great, but then when you have it in responsive and it brings it down or whatever, and it doesn't necessarily work as much as you want it to,
so I am I boost the font size on most of my recording. Like the text editor is like comically, it's uncomfortably large to work with when I'm recording. And I do that specifically because I know a lot of people watch them on their phones, and I want to make sure it's actually like readable.
Right. Cool. So you are thinking about these things when you're
I forget the exact, like I have it like saved somewhere. Every time I go to record, I'm like, all right, boost the font.
That's awesome. Yeah, Vimeo is really good too. I mean, back when I was at ClickFunnels, we used Vimeo for hosting a lot of like and whenever I coached people on how to create courses and things, it was definitely always recommending Vimeo for stuff that you have inside of a course. If it's outside of the course, and you're just using it for marketing purposes, things like use YouTube, right? Yeah. But that's kind of our go-to. So, and the control is just amazing of the things you can do.
Yeah,
like
for sure. So for sure, it's
cool.
It's money easily spent. It also means I don't have to deal with hosting large video files, or the other thing they do really well is.
So you stay at $5 a month on your.
I do. They do a great job of adjusting the like doing bandwidth aware streaming, right? So if I want a bad connection or a smaller screen, they're not going to send a 1080p like video file to my tiny little like mobile screen. Which is super nice.
Super awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's for the most part the stack.
We picked your brain a lot.
I enjoyed it though. This is great.
Yeah, no, this is super fun, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We have so many links and things for our viewers to check out. And I think we pretty much covered the gamut of how to find out more about what you're doing. And so people check out the show notes. Will be down here for the things you want. And thank you. I see you popping in the ebook boilerplate there as well. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you and all the work you do, and look forward to seeing all the the new stuff that you're coming out with, and also wishing you the best with, this new thing that you just started. So, yeah, really cool and exciting.
Thanks so much.
All right, everybody go check out leanwebclub.com, and hopefully there's a 7-day free trial there soon. All right.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
We'll see you in the next one. All right, guys.